Sounds good.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No worries. But yeah, main takeaway here is that learning how to pivot and learning how to take it on the chin and keep going is probably one of the biggest things I learned in PhD because especially during grad school, not everything always goes your way. So I think the second takeaway, again, it's not technical. All the technical stuff is kind of the basis for your future career. But the second biggest takeaway I learned during PhD is that networking is really everything. So I'll tell the story about how I got my first job and why I think it's so important to start networking day one and what that actually means and look like. So during my last year of grad school, I started using Twitter quite a bit. So I actively and consciously decided to start writing tweet threads. Back in these days, Twitter was very useful for academics. You go there to learn, and I was contributing. I was in this case, this is me doing some DNA sequencing in my car as I'm driving along. But a lot of the time, I would be writing about things I learned, things about progression in the field, and this helped. This helped my future employers see who I was and see that I have a specific skill set, and that I can communicate it in bite-sized tweets. And this is actually how I got my first job. So through this, what can be thought of as leveraged networking. My future boss actually booked my public Calendly link from my Twitter profile. And 2 weeks later, I ended up at my first industry job in Boston at Volta Labs. So I think the key point is for me, this looked like going on Twitter, writing tweet threads. But I think the key thing is here is to put yourself out there, market yourself as well. Because I think this is the reason why I was able to get my first foot in the door in industry, and it's helped me grow quite a bit today. So my first industry job, I went in Boston to a company called Volta Labs Inc. And we were a venture capital backed startup that was developing an automation platform in the DNA sequencing field. So it was a little bit outside of my expertise area, but I can contribute some of the biological expertise because after all, this was a hardware benchtop platform. So my role here, really as an early scientist in the company, firstly was actually developing the product. I was responsible for some of the R&D that fed back directly to the engineers, and that changed how the product was being made, and I was able to implement some workflows as well. And then I also had a second role there doing bioinformatics. So lots of data analysis for internal research purposes. This included lots of programming, project management as well. But one of the things about working at a startup, and I think working at a startup is a great but challenging opportunity if you ever get one right at outside of grad school, because you often get asked to do a lot of things outside your job description. So a lot of this, for me included, I was the person to go demo the product with customers. I was collaborating with our marketing team to actually produce the scientific posters and marketing material that we actually showed our early customers. So I think a few key takeaways from my first job at Volta Labs is that I worked there for about 2.5 years, is that industry moves very, very quickly. The default is really, really high quality work, but you need to move fast to be able to keep up in industry. And I think that transition from academia to industry was the biggest thing that I learned. And I think, at Volta Labs, I came in with the idea that I've got these technical skills. This is kind of why they want me. But I think what I really learned there as well is that the companies thrive on great people, not just the technical skills. You can imagine, at a startup, there's sometimes some stressful times trying to hit deadlines. It's really important to, keep a cool, positive attitude and, just enjoy the process with your coworkers as well. And I think this is something I didn't really understand about how industry operates, and until I actually got into the position. And lastly, at Volta, I think the other biggest thing I learned was that you get out of it typically what you put into it. So what I mean by this is that if you go above and beyond and keep delivering really, really high quality work, you'll keep getting asked to do other things. And this is where you get new opportunities to, meet new clients, meet new customers, do and learn new skills outside of what your job position is that you can then use in your future positions in your career. So maybe a little bit about why I decided to start Flow Genomics. So I left my job in January, and one of the main reasons, actually, I'll tell you a story. So I was at the airport flying back from Boston to Toronto, and I was just sitting there waiting for my flight, and this popped up on the news. So this was the U.S. Tariffs being implemented on Canadian goods. When I was sitting there, I felt a pretty big, felt like a gut punch. It wasn't a great feeling that the U.S. was kind of doing this to Canada. But on top of this, I realized that it was actually a massive risk for a lot of Canadian researchers to be sending all of their samples to the States. And this is typically what all the Canadian researchers would do, is they would send all their samples to the United States for sequencing. But when this happened, I realized that it's actually a massive risk for advancement of Canadian research programs, for one person to be able to decide that the borders can effectively shut down, which actually ended up happening on September 1st. So this was why I really why I decided to start Flow Genomics, not just because it's great to have a Canadian service provider, but also because it is a real risk to Canadian research if we can't do it ourselves. So that's what I'm currently building right now. So we do lots of whole plasmid sequencing for biological engineers, and we focus on very very fast turnaround times. So what we do is we operate a network of drop boxes across Canada, and our customers will just drop their samples off. We take care of all of the logistics and get sent to our lab, and we process their samples and return them the very next day. So the key thing here is we do lots of fast DNA sequencing service, and this is a technical service aimed at pretty much anyone who engineers biology in Canada, and there's quite a bit of those labs around. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned so far from Flow Genomics is that really execution is critical. What I mean by this is that the idea and the concept behind Flow Genomics is not necessarily innovative, novel, because this did exist in the States previously. However, just being able to execute and do this quickly is good enough to get to build a business out of, and filling the gap in the market that unfortunately the tariffs and other border measures have left. Just by executing and doing what you say you'll do, this can help you build a very very successful business. So my role here as founder is pretty much everything from finance to logistics. But again, I'm going to highlight here networking, networking, networking. This includes just talking with customers. This includes going out and just chatting with people in your field, other like-minded individuals who have some good ideas on where the field's going. Just having interesting conversations that can either, maybe it leads to a new customer, maybe it leads to a good friend. So I think networking is super critical, and it's probably the biggest takeaway that I've learned. It's super important. So just generally, I think from my first few years in industry and now founding a startup, the three kind of takeaways I would give would be to keep learning. So it never stops, and especially now in kind of the age of AI, where specialist information is available, through ChatGPT. You really have to keep learning and keep pushing yourself to stay up to date. And this is something that, even though my PhD is done and over with, I feel like I've done like an entire new PhD in a lot of other topics. There's a lot of learning on a daily basis that needs to be done. So keep learning. I think my first few stops in my career have taught me that unconventional approaches can work. So for example, for job seeking, leveraging your network, perhaps by social media, perhaps by going to networking events, or just being friends with people in your field. This can actually work to get your foot in the door in industry. And then it keeps snowballing from there. For me, it was a very unconventional approach using Twitter, but it's something that worked. And lastly, I think it's also important to focus entirely on what you're doing at the time. So if you're doing grad school, focus all your effort on that, and do it the best job that you can. Because I think what I've learned through first couple of years is that when you do good work, people will keep asking you to do more. And I think that's true, whether you work for someone or whether you run your own company. So you definitely have to make sure you're focused and do the best job that you can, given the time. Yeah, I think that's it for me. I'm happy to take any questions or chat about anything.